From KVUE News in Austin, you're watching Texas This Week with Ashley Goodo.
Good morning. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is ready to go head-to-head in a special session with Governor Greg Abbott over banning THC. And former Congressman Beto O'Rourke is traveling across the state talking to Texans. We catch up with him to discuss his political ambitions. But first, let's get to the three things you need to know in Texas politics. The race to be the next Attorney General of Texas is getting a bit more crowded. This week, Republican State Senator Joan Huffman of Houston launched her campaign. The former district judge was first elected to the Texas Senate in 2008 and currently chairs the powerful Senate Finance Committee. Huffman joins fellow State Senator Mays Middleton and former Department of Justice Attorney Aaron Wright on the Republican ticket to replace AG Ken Paxton, who is running for U.S. Senate. The U.S. Supreme Court handed Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton a victory this week, ruling the Lone Star State can enforce a 2023 law that requires websites to verify a user's age if the content is explicit. Some adult websites challenged the law, claiming it violated free speech. President Donald Trump's job approval rating dipped for the third straight time in the latest Texas Politics Project poll. A June poll of registered Texas voters shows 51% disapprove of the job the president is doing, while 44% approve. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick did not hold back this week, going all in on Governor Greg Abbott for vetoing Senate Bill 3, legislation to ban THC in Texas.
The governor of the state of Texas wants to legalize recreational marijuana. He says if we were to allow Senate Bill 3 to become law, its enforcement would be enjoined for years. How does he know that? Where has he been all session? Where's he been? I mean, we get this proclamation from him last night after midnight, and he parachutes in at the last moment with arguments that we do not think are valid. And look, I'm not mad at the governor. I'm not mad at the governor, but I'm not going to legalize marijuana in Texas. And if people want to vote me out of office for that, so be it.
Along with his veto, the governor called a special session in July for lawmakers to regulate THC. So to ban or to regulate? That's the question, putting Abbott and Patrick at odds. Scott Braddock, editor of Harvey Kronberg's Quorum Report, weighs in on the fight. I cannot recall many a time that I have seen Dan Patrick firing off about the governor the way he did on Monday. What's your reaction to all that?
I have known Dan Patrick for about 20 years, and you know he's someone who often employs fiery rhetoric, but never at the governor. They have always been joined at the hip on just about every policy. The closest thing that I can remember to the kind of fight that they're having this week about THC was the fight they had about property taxes 2 years ago, and the lieutenant governor actually mentioned this during his press conference where, did you feel the same way? He looked kind of defeated during that press conference, really just angry, going off about how the governor acted in bad faith and all of that. Well, 2 years ago, they had this property tax fight that the lieutenant governor mentioned in his press conference. And you might remember that when they didn't agree about the details of how to deliver property tax relief to Texans 2 years ago, that kicked off multiple special sessions in 2023. But as the lieutenant governor mentioned during that same press conference, that wasn't a situation where there was a veto and there was a line drawn in the sand in quite the same way. And I've just never heard Patrick essentially call the governor a liar. He said that the governor acted in bad faith. Patrick went so far as to say that the governor had told him that the ban on THC was probably fine with him as the governor. And Patrick said that witnesses heard him say that as if he needed to prove himself about that. But, that whole show from Patrick earlier in the week, it was hard to make heads or tails of it because on the one hand, he was full of bluster and he was saying the governor is wrong. He was insisting that the governor wants to see full-on marijuana legalization in Texas, which is not the way I read the governor's statement at all. But Patrick also in the same press conference said that what the governor wants might pass the Texas Senate anyway. So I think there is some acknowledgement that Patrick may be out of leverage to get what he wants here.
And, not only that, but also accusing the governor kind of not doing his job, right? Of saying that he was silent on this issue the whole time. He parachuted in at the last minute. I mean, those are his words. But to say that the governor wants to legalize weed in Texas, Your thoughts on that? Is that where Greg Abbott stands?
Well, no, that's a stretch by anybody's judgment in this situation. I was talking with experts in this public policy area, and all of them made this point that for the states that do have legal marijuana, recreational marijuana, that the proposal the governor's talking about doesn't look anything like that. It doesn't look anything like what they have in California or Oregon or Washington State, some of the places that Patrick pointed to as basically he said that they were hellholes because he said, we're Texas and we're not like these other places. I would say those places are actually pretty nice. But point is that Patrick's drawing this red line and being so accusatory against the governor in all the time that they have both been in the offices they're in, which is just over a decade now. They've never had a clash on this level.
I think the last time you and I really sat down and did a deep dive conversation was when you were on the campaign trail for governor of Texas. Talk to us about what you've been doing since then.
We're running this organization called Powered by People, which is registering voters across the state, including here in Travis County in Austin. And then importantly, and this is really unique to Texas, this is the toughest state in the nation in which to vote, in which to register to vote. And previously, well-intentioned people have registered voters and then said, good luck, go out there and vote. Our organization, our volunteers actually help these voters navigate the process of making sure they get their voter registration card, they have the right form of voter ID, they know where early voting takes place, the rules when they get into the polling place. So we're focusing on that work. We're holding town halls across the state, everywhere from Denton to Amarillo to Humble, right outside of Houston.
As you are registering voters, especially for this upcoming cycle in 2026, it is going to be a big election. Obviously, we know midterms historically fare well for the party that's not in power. Which would be good news for Texas Democrats. And look, let's just get right to the chase. There's lots of rumblings about whether or not you are going to throw your name in the hat. What can you tell us?
It feels a lot like the first time that I met many of your viewers in 2017 and 2018. I was an unknown member of Congress from El Paso. I was traveling the state doing these town halls. And it was the first chance the voters of Texas, including in Austin, had an ability to vent their frustration, their anger, their disappointment, but also their hopes and their aspirations in the wake of Trump's first 2 years in office. The kids in cages, the family separation, the things that are so un-American and un-Texan. And I think the reason we did so well, young voter turnout through the roof, 12 Democrats beating 12 incumbent Republicans for the state house, Colin Allred winning in North Texas. The reason all that stuff happened is because the people of Texas came together and they kind of defied not just geography and the other divisions of race and ethnicity and income, but also partisanship. Republicans and Democrats, independents came together and said, we want something better. I'm hearing that across Texas right now in 2025, ahead of the elections that'll take place in 2026. So I'm going to keep doing the registration work. I'm going to keep doing the town halls. Maybe I will run for office. That's the highest and best use of what I can offer this state. I am there. I'm not afraid of a statewide run. We've been out there before to every one of these 254 counties. But I want to make sure that I, just like millions of my fellow Texans, are doing all that we can with what we have, just where we are at this moment of truth. Because the future, the fate of this country really depends on what we do right now. And so that's why you see me out there doing everything I can, joined by a lot of other people doing the same.
Yeah, in fact, at the upcoming town hall that you're going to be speaking at, you're going to be joined by State Representative James Tallarico. You're going to be joined by Congressman Joaquin Castro. We're hearing rumblings this week that there was actually a meeting, right, of those two lawmakers, along with Colin Allred. Are we thinking maybe of a Democratic dream ticket here? Because that's something we could see.
I sure hope so. I learned running in 2018, running in 2022, the more talent you have on the ticket, the better you're going to do. You mentioned James Tallarico. He won his race against an entrenched incumbent Republican in 2018. Not only did he do well for himself, he did well for the rest of us on the ticket. He sent votes up to the Senate race against Ted Cruz, where we got within 2.5 points of beating that guy. So the stronger the ticket, the more united the front, the better ability to field candidates in every one of the 254 counties for every state house, every U.S. congressional race, and to your point, every statewide position, governor, attorney general, lieutenant governor, comptroller, railroad commissioner. I mean, you name it, we've got to have our best and our brightest. So I think Joaquin Castro, James Tallarico, Colin Allred, Jasmine Crockett, Ron Nirenberg, Andy Brown here in Travis County. We don't lack for political talent in the state of Texas, but people are going to have to step up because this is not a time for the faint of heart. Everything that we care about is on the line, so all of us have to see what we can do and be out there. I hope we have that dream ticket that you're talking about.
You know, I know what you're going to tell me, but you know, I still have to ask anyway. There are a lot of offices that are going to be on the ballot in 2026. Can you at least give us a hint? Do you have your eyes on one in particular?
You know, I'll do whatever I can wherever I'm most helpful. If that is continuing to run Powered by People, holding these town hall meetings, supporting other candidates, I'll do that. If it's running for Senate and providing that contrast with John Cornyn or Ken Paxton, and ensuring that people in Texas and really across the country understand that the fate of this country hangs on the balance. This will decide who has power in the United States Senate going forward. And wouldn't it be wonderful if Texas, which has been so long written off or taken for granted, is the state that comes through at this moment of truth? So that's a very exciting race for me. But again, I want to make sure that I'm thoughtful about this, that I'm listening to the people of Texas, and that I serve where I will do the greatest good.
While many campaigns are launching and behind-the-scene talks are happening, candidates can't actually file to run in the March 2026 primary for another 4 months. So a lot could happen and change between now and then. That's Texas This Week.